Are Jean and Leon here? I don't know.
Nope,
No,
just
they
our
haven't come in
two
yet.
contractors so far.
Okay,
Let's see.
well, hopefully they're gonna join us. Okay, so then we don't have to, we have no one online, no members online yet, so we don't have to record our attendance.
That's right, that's right.
Okay,
Do you want to make introductions? I'm happy to introduce myself.
sure.
I don't think I've met everybody.
Oh,
for
I'm
them, but sure.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sure. Good idea.
So I'll start. I'm Rob with the town. I work in the planning and
Oh,
zoning.
Rob Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now to put a face to an email.
Yeah,
It's
sorry. I
always
didn't
good.
realize
Yeah,
that
it's always good.
everybody didn't know
Yeah,
you.
thanks. I'm Jay Wellens.
Good to meet you in
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ed Rippey.
Ed,
Yeah.
good to meet you.
Yeah.
I know
Caroline.
you,
No.
I know you.
I know, Kate Stewart, right?
Yes, yes. Well, great to meet you guys. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome.
Thanks for
You're
having
welcome.
us.
Yeah.
Gosh, my poor hair.
Do you guys want to do your minutes now? You want to start with that, or do you want to go to that later?
Probably we might as well, in case they do join us. We,
Okay, we'll save it.
okay.
And
Has
you have-
everyone had a chance to look at the minutes?
I just did, yeah.
You want?
Yeah, I just saw something I was supposed to do and I didn't do it.
Oh, my goodness. What was that? You bring in your.
I was supposed to bring the packets from my extension for what I learned there, but that's something, it'll keep going, it's not going away. So anyway.
Under call the meeting, it says that Jerry was
We should,
called the meeting and it
We
was
should.
Shirley.
yeah.
So,
We should have I think we have to, have, a motion to open them to, before we can make corrections.
okay.
So I hear motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve
Okay,
the minutes.
seconded? Somebody do a second?
Sure.
And then then if you have any corrections, you can do them, then we'll approve them
Sure,
after
okay.
corrections. Did I hear a second?
I did.
Okay, great. Now, does anyone have any corrections, additions, or amendments?
Just
That's what I said. You called the meeting to order, not
Yep.
Jerry.
Oh,
Lucky
that-
Yeah,
Look that I have, it, so it's still type instead of green at the.
Your spirit lives on.
Yeah.
oh, I didn't even notice that.
I've done that with so many things, you
Yeah.
know, you have a template and you just use it, and you
Yep.
use it and use it.
Yeah, and we have a guest, public tonight.
Yes.
Okay. So, does everyone approve the minute? Anyone else have anything?
They look fine.
You still taking a look at them?
Yep.
Is everyone in favor?
Here she comes.
Jean?
Jean, that's gonna be you. She's coming
Oh,
in.
good. Yes, there she is. Is she on?
Yeah.
Say hello.
Hi,
Hi, welcome.
thank
So do we-
you.
I'll just make a note that she arrived after
Okay.
that.
Took me a
So,
few minutes to find my,
Right.
just getting,
we just approved the minutes, Jean, and we're going to public comments now.
You didn't take a vote, but I'm gonna abstain because I was not here.
Oh,
I was at the NTIA meeting with the other town people. That's important.
yeah, that's right. It was 2 months ago, so I just
Yeah,
remember that now.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Did you have any public comment at this time, Jerry?
No, I'm just basically here to listen to what, Rob and the rest of you have to say regarding the master plan.
Okay, great.
Until then, I don't have any comments.
So here we go with the master plan discussion.
All right, well, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. We won't take up too much of your time, but this is the fifth one of these meetings that I'm attending, and that the team that I'll introduce you to in just a minute is attending. Just a little bit of background for you. Master plan is required by the state. It had been quite a while since we had done a master plan. 1995 was our last adopted master plan. There was a few fits and starts to update it in the intervening time, but never got to a formal adoption of the master plan. until 2022 December, so just a little over a year ago. We did finally adopt basically what we call phase one of the master plan, which included the state required chapters. There's only two chapters that the state actually requires us to have. One of them is future land use and the other is visioning. And so we did a few other chapters as an economic development chapter, a transportation and a housing chapter. And the intention was that we would adopt the first 5 chapters that I just told you about. And then we would come back and do basically a phase 2 of the master plan. And that's what we're working on now. Kicked it off early January. We have hired a firm out of Plymouth, New Hampshire called Resilience Planning and Design. We'll introduce you to in just a second. We have 2 people with them here tonight. But just to give you guys a little bit more background, these are the 5 chapters we're working on now in the phase 2 project of the master plan. And so it's kind of neat because we do have corresponding committees for each of those 5 chapters to come see, committees or commissions. So early on, a couple weeks ago, we met with the recreation group. We met with Heritage and Preservation. Shirley was at that meeting. We had a great meeting with Energy Committee last week. Municipal Facilities and Services was a meeting we had earlier this week. You were there for that one? No?
No, did you meet with them? I was gonna say, you were.
You were there, that's right.
Yes.
And so, last but not least, we're coming to see you guys, and you have hopefully all received the little questionnaire from our contractor. They provided that as sort of a good way to get the conversation started. So without further ado, I'll introduce our 2 representatives from our master planning contractor. They're out of Plymouth, New Hampshire, which is just up 118, as you guys know. Liz Kelly and Crystal Kidd are here, and we've been enjoying our project with them, and they're doing some great work. We've already got some really neat stuff sort of in process, and obviously this conversation is sort of the beginning for the chapter on conservation and so forth with the other chapters. And I will say that if you guys think of anything after this meeting, that Liz and Crystal will certainly take that. You can submit it to me as an email, or you can write up a Word doc in response to that. But obviously the discussion tonight will be most productive. So I'll turn it over and introduce Liz Kelly. She's sort of the point person on this project for us. Hello, Liz.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us here tonight. We really appreciate you taking time out of your meeting to have a conversation with us about the Phase 2 Master Plan project. So as Rob mentioned, we sent out some discussion questions that we're hoping that we can use as a guide with you all here tonight. We're also hoping that that will stimulate some of your own ideas of items that you really want to make sure that we hear as we embark on the public outreach related to this project, and then the eventual development of a conservation related chapter. So this conversation with you all here tonight is really important. We see a lot of value in talking with you to help kind of identify some of the priorities, opportunities, needs that you all are aware of in Enfield, knowing that we'll also be reaching out to the public as well. But we see this conversation as a very important piece of the puzzle. So with that, I'll just jump right in. I'll start at the beginning of the discussion question worksheet, but again, we'll let the conversation evolve more organically as we go along. But the first question is, when you think about open spaces and undeveloped land in Enfield, what are the most notable places to you and why?
Okay.
Oh, you want our answers now?
Would love them. Yeah, would love for any kind of discussion or conversation around the first question, and then we'll go.
What the questions? Yeah.
I can start out. I made some notes, so I'll get the conversation rolling. First thing I think of is the waters, the lakes, Mascoma, Crystal, Spectacle, Georges, Smith, and all the little ones, and the river. So Enfield is a land of many waters, and I think that's a good way to think of it. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And why? Because water is life. We need clean water. Okay? Anyone else?
I wrote some notes too, and what I wrote was, discussion seems to be intensifying on concentrating a lot of our new population and new housing starts downtown. And I think if that becomes a definite plan, that we need to create green spaces now before the building gets too far along, because then you can't do anything about it. I think Lakeside Park is really a beautiful addition to that end of town, and if we continue that kind of feeling all along the rail trail. We also have a pond there, a lake, a rail trail, and so we've got a lot of teaching, fundamental teaching issues right in that one spot too. So that's just a thought.
Ed, did you want to go?
Yeah,
I didn't want to skip you.
that's fine. Jay kind of stole my thunder. I was
Sorry,
thinking-
Ed.
That's okay. I was thinking mainly of.
Build on it, build on it.
The lakes and the rivers. Very concerned about the quality of the lake water and very concerned about the development up both the lake that causes incredible amounts of runoff into the lake. I feel like I'm a broken record. I think I've said this at every single meeting since I've joined. But it's very, very important that we do things to rectify the runoff problem that we have.
Lee,
This is Lee, whoops, sorry.
oh, Lee's on it too, good. Mhm.
Hi,
Did
I'm
you-
Lee Davis. I'm at home suffering from a bad tick bite. That's why I'm not there tonight. But my main concern and my love is wetlands, especially the Bog Road, George Pond. As the members know, we've been severely challenged with people encroaching on our wetland. And we were able to successfully extend our setback. The town meeting voted that in last year. That was a big step for us to have the support. And we have a lot of wetlands here. We have a lot of wet meadows here, vernal pools. We are trying to be an educational conservation commission by getting the word out. Jay, who's there tonight, goes into the schools to try to educate. But I think it's the wetlands. I think they have to be protected. And it seems to be that sometimes the ordinances from the state are getting lesser and lesser protection. So we have to have more and more support from our legislative, our selectmen, planning boards and zoning. That's what I have to say.
And that's what I'd like to add to it too. I think it's very important going forward that we work together with the other boards who are all making decisions, and that it's a balanced decision that will, be able to have development, but be careful of the environment when you do. And I think that's very important that we are working together.
Do you want to let Jean go? I can go last. Do you want to let Jean go and I can go last?
Oh, Jean, did you want to speak, Jean? You have to unmute yourself.
There we go.
There.
Sure. Thanks. I be new here. I probably have a lot less to offer on this comment, but I have had a chance to get pretty well acquainted with the lands around where we live, and I'll, pile on as far as the waters and all that has already been mentioned. I'm a public health person, and having clean water is, top priority for humans and all of nature. So definitely must concentrate on that and kind of how that gets managed. with people and construction and whatnot. But I think I'll bring up the wildlife. We've had a chance to, get acquainted with the diverse wildlife, bear, moose, foxes, wild turkeys, salamanders, all the various critters that are, around. And I guess I would speak up for them in terms of how they fit into this whole equation. They get squeezed anytime there's a change in the environment, a road is built or housing or what have you. And so, and just, general traffic. I just watched the webinar yesterday about turtles that you put us in touch with through the University of New Hampshire. And so that was very enlightening. And you think about the number of wildlife that die as a result of traffic and other human activity. So it's certainly very, very special, the wildlife that exists. And it's an important part, we're all in this together, and we will do better when everything like that is doing better and fits into the equation too. So I guess I would speak to that.
In terms of what's the most notable places, I think the water and the lakes are really obvious, because when we think of Enfield and recreation, as we tie it in, we think of the lakes, but I think a lot of us as a very mountainous area, and we have a lot of diverse landscape. So the mountains where the spring sources are, are what leads down into the lakes. And so how are we looking at, the beautiful, like over 30% of our town is already preserved, and it's gorgeous. And we're lucky to have a combination of state lands and some town preserved land and things that go into that equation. So, that contributes to the trails systems that we have. And while it can contribute to problems, it can also contribute to a solution, because it is already preserved. So I think it's a real opportunity. It's also an opportunity. A lot of people, I grew up always thinking if you cut down a tree that a bunny would die, right? That's what I thought when I was a kid. And as an adult, I found out that you do selective and planned cuts, because there are other kinds of wildlife, like, the bunnies like the underbrush, some birds do. And so I think we have a real opportunity as a town with these spaces that are already preserved in the hills and mountains to protect the lakes and the rivers and the wetlands, and to also make a really good habitat that we can manage. And I think the state does a pretty good job managing their preserve that's here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So you'll notice I'm going to skip around a little bit on this handout of questions, but I'll revisit ones later. I just want to make sure that we kind of talk a little bit about existing open spaces, but also provide you a chance to give some feedback on future priorities. So I don't want to get to the end of this meeting and not have hit that as a topic. So we've been digging a little bit into some of the existing open spaces and conserved lands that are in Enfield, but I wanted to give you all an opportunity to just talk a little bit about the existing conserved lands as you see them as a conservation commission. We know that there's some state-owned land, but we do also know that there's some town as well. And could you just provide a little bit of detail on, in general, how some of those, especially town-owned lands, are they through conservation easements? What kind of conservation status do some of those lands have? We provide some examples on the handout as well, aside from that, whether it's even set aside lands from cluster developments, et cetera, which are considered more protected, but.
If I may ask the speaker a question, I'd appreciate it. Do you have a copy of the natural resources inventory that the Conservation Commission? Have you read that from page to page?
In process.
Okay, well, those matters in there are, and the Conservation Commission's opinions are something that are very important for you to keep in mind.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it was great to hear that it was such a recently updated document. So we'll definitely use that as a resource. And if that information is pretty cataloged in there, we can go to another question. But I'll let the group decide.
Yeah, it does, Liz. It identifies all the different groups that are conserving land, you know, the Upper Valley Land Trust, New
Right.
Hampshire Fish and Game, all those groups.
Great.
And if you'd like a hard copy, I have one here that Rob can get to you.
Yeah, my center of the electric.
Because sometimes with the maps that fold out, it might be easier to.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we should be okay with digital because we'll zoom in on them on our computer. But thank you so much. Yeah, we'll let you know. Okay, great. So over the last 10 years or so, what have been the town's biggest accomplishments as they relate to land and water protection that you see? And what still needs to be done?
When you asked me earlier today, I thought you can pull a lot of these from the town report each year because the zoning articles pretty much always pass. So we could look at the minutes and see what you guys think are important. It was just an idea because we're not gonna remember all of them. And I was like, ooh, that's gonna be a tough one.
Right, that's what I
I just
was
opened
gonna,
all of those.
I have it online too, but
Mhm.
the actual reports are out and I wish I had remembered in time to go get one.
Yeah.
But,
We can, yeah, we'll definitely utilize the reports as a resource. If there's a handful that stick out to you as being particularly noteworthy, we'd love to hear them, but we'll use the town reports to get a more comprehensive list.
What was the initial question?
Town
what-
accomplishments.
Yes,
Conserving-
biggest accomplishments as they
Number
relate to
4,
land and
Matt,
water protection.
Yeah, I think two of the things that strike me is the milfoil project. That has been very successful. We were headed to
Yeah,
a pretty
bleak.
bleak outlook for milfoil, and we seem to have eradicated most of it. The other thing, which I'm not sure the town has done, I think it's the state, but the host program at the
oh, the Lake Coast?
land.
Yeah, that's New Hampshire Lakes Association.
Yeah.
It's been going on since 2002.
Also,
I was on a committee that started it.
I didn't realize it was that long,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, that has also been a big help in keeping the lake cleaner.
Tell these guys what that entails.
But, each lake that's part of it has lake hosts that are trained by, this is also in conjunction with DES. DES is just part of the training, but now most of it's done on Zoom but you have people at your boat launch who check boats in and out to see if there's any milfoil or another invasive species on them. And you also have education pamphlets that you provide there too. And it's been a very successful program. There is, the last I knew, there wasn't a lake there that's been part of it that didn't have milfoil at the beginning, that has had milfoil come in. I know we've found it 3 or 4 times, not just milfoil, other different types of invasives. Even they are another place they're apt to be on that you want to check if you're a lake host after is the boat trailer. Because lots of times the boat trailers are. And it is one of the dangerous things about it is that some of these boats, you know, they want you to expel all your water before you go in the lake now, and also when you come out, because some of the boats have ballast that take in plant life, and they can take them to another lake that easily.
I have something. This is Lee Davis checking in again. Like to toot the horn for Jay Welnick, who started a great educational program in the schools. And I think we've also moved forward. One of our accomplishments is for having public informational meetings with speakers that have come in, usually held at the Shaker Museum. And I just think we've had the last few years big accomplishments. And we've also had Dr. Tice, who kept us updated on any new DES activity, good or bad, lobbyist activity. So we have a general idea which way everything is going as far as what we have to do to protect our environment.
And our trail master, that's a big success too. to
Yeah,
have someone that's looking after our trails, which we have
I
many.
had that down, yeah.
Yep.
You know, I think we have a good system of trails right now, and I think bringing that trail master in to keep them maintained is good. I mean,
Wonderful.
trails are windows to the outdoors, to the environment, and the more people that get outside and look around, the better off we are in the long run.
Another thing we have on the lakes too, that protect, the Lake Coast program protects the lake at the boat launch. The Weed Watcher program is one that we have volunteers all around the lake that are watching a certain area where you have to find new growth and they check it regularly because the invasives are more apt to be bright and shiny than our native plants. And if we see anything that's suspicious, take it to DES to have it identified. Because we had one that a few years ago, there was someone visiting that found a piece of they thought was an invasive species. And we had Amy Smagula, who we've been working with since the 90s on it, on the Weed Watcher program. She's the one that organizes it at DES. She even did DNA testing on it because she was 99% sure it wasn't invasive, but she wanted to be sure. So there's a lot of things they do to protect it.
Well, the people that headed that program were absolutely magnificent, because if you had something you thought was milfoil, they would be like there in a second to check for you.
And Mascoma has done a great job on,
Yes.
you can never eradicate it, but
You can keep it.
they have done a wonderful job of pulling it and keeping it down.
I wrote you a list, so, and I'll add, I should have told you, I'm, the select board rep. So you'll probably see me again, or you may have seen me before. So we're, each year, we're a tree city. And I think even though that's not like a massive impact, it's that it spreads the message that this is important to us. And I think some of that public front facing messaging goes along with the education these guys have been doing. The invasive species inventory and plan that came out of that, I'm particularly proud of that product. I think that they had some public education. We're going to be continuing to do public education. It's not just going to impact Enfield, it's going to teach our neighbors how to work, identify how to make these plans, and it's going to be a model for, I think, the state. And in particular, we really want the state themselves to pick up on it because they're carrying invasive species from town to town. They are one of the biggest propagators of moving invasive species that are on land out and route. So that's a pretty exciting thing, and we continue. We have a lot of work to do there in development, and this team is great at doing education.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's great because we focused on our lakes with the invasive species for years. And this is on our land where we've got a lot of invasives that we need to control.
Which will drive out our natives and potentially impact our wildlife.
Yeah.
So we kicked off some work with Soak Up the Rain, and UNH has been in to work with us, and we're to continue to do that and with a real focus on stormwater, which ties into some of the earlier comments. These guys have mentioned public informational meetings. I just want to touch on, they did a wonderful farmers market appearance, and I think that got a lot of interest and people really talked about it. I, at least as a select board member, heard good feedback, and I hope you did too. So I think that the really going out in public in a positive way to teach thou shalt do instead of thou shalt not is equally important in education. The select board has, when we start look at projects, we've talked a lot about the environment. And one of the things when we're working with DES is you don't just say, how do we get out of paperwork? You say, how do we do this so we impact the environment less, so we don't have to do an obscene amount of engineering and permitting. That's not great for the waterway anyways. A good example of that is the Oak Hill Bridge replacement. That was a pretty important replacement, and we made decisions on the style of replacement so that it would impact the waterway the least, and that all flows eventually downhill into the lakes. DPW has updated their approach to ditch maintenance, and they can tell you more, but I know the way they blow out the leaves instead of trying to, it's a very different, they've got a new blower system, and instead of going up there and relying on scraping it out all the time, they're able to blow it out. So we're not constantly digging it up and causing more silt going downhill to the lake. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's what, we also a few years ago got a grant from, the Eastman Charitable Foundation to send out a townwide educational pamphlet to educate people on the need to protect our watersheds, because it doesn't matter how far away they are, everything still goes down and ends up in our lakes.
Mm-hmm. And then I think another one that's from the town perspective, since I'm a de facto member of the Board of Health, because that's what the state of New Hampshire says, that our health officer has done a really nice job following up on the cyanobacteria updates and staying up to date on information and working closely with the lake associations. He reports back to the select board, which kind of ties us all in. I think that's a really important component. And he also follows up on issues like septic failures or a report of a lack of a septic. And again, that's a really important component where, that crosses between conservation, health, and the environment in our conservation efforts. So those are my.
I got a couple. I would put down the expansion of our municipal sewer collection system,
Oh, yeah.
particularly on Route 4A, but also down Route 4. The 4A actually went down almost 2 miles to pick up a very large housing complex called Lakeview condos. They had was 150 or so units there that had failing septic systems galore, and they actually had like 14 or 15 leach fields that were all in failure. They were having to pump the sewage on a daily basis to a truck for removal.
Where was this?
Lakeview. It was daily.
Oh, yeah, I remember,
So-
this was before,
Yeah.
For years,
But
their
that-
whole history
I
is
would look at that as a big win for the town. We
huge.
worked hand in glove with the homeowners association there to extend it. They're paying for it through some creative financing that we help them with.
Betterment assessment.
And there's a betterment assessment. They did get some USDA funding and so forth through rural development. I guess the big challenge there, though, is that there's a lot of people between where we originally left off and now where the Lakeview condo connection is, that really should connect and haven't. It's a problem that we face because it's not what they call a gravity sewer. It's a pressure or force main system. So we can't mandate connections in between, and there's a lot of lakefront that is there. And I know that there's a lot of people that really should connect. But we just don't have the vehicle or mechanism right now
You can't require.
to require it.
Now, yeah, my mother, years ago, when they put it in Canaan, she was required to. And she had just spent a lot of money 2 or 3 years ago on a larger
Yeah.
leach field.
Yeah.
But she had.
So you can only mandate in the state of New Hampshire people to connect on gravity.
Yeah.
So force main, you're not allowed to but you can incentivize it. And I just want to look at small a, what needs to be done. We've talked as a select board about how do we maybe talk to Lebanon about the connection fee, look at our connection fee, maybe figure out a financing tool where we do a
On-bill
betterment.
financing. I think
Yeah,
that's the
on-bill
big-
financing, basically, where we're not doing it to the detriment of the system and our ability to pay all of our fees, but we are making it so it's affordable to somebody who might be on the cusp of deciding to update or reinstall or like forget about their kind of not great system and get them onto it. And I think the
That'd
person
be
who has the
very
best example in this from, I'm gonna point at Carol, because Carol made a really big decision and I would say the biggest one in Enfields,
Yeah,
to do a really responsible thing and connect her house when she didn't have
and
to.
they've helped like 3 or 4 others
Yeah.
because they made that investment,
Yeah.
5 others.
But, so, and I think
That
that's
is
a
a
great model, and
responsible thing to
it's
do.
a great
Yeah.
model for
Yes.
how to do it. And if we can look at the model that Carol helped facilitate with the town team, maybe we can do it for, I think a good example for a prime target would be the mobile home park.
Yes, yep.
Yeah,
Another one that I throw out there, and Shirley, you can pile on here, is the acquisition of lands that were previously owned by railroad on Mascoma Lake in what we call Lakeside Park. There was an old motel there years ago, and it had a very good chance of falling into private
yeah.
development hands. Instead, we acquired it as a town, and it's now a public park where we're planning to model really good behavior in terms of
Yes.
ecosystems and lake systems. And there's going to be an
Lake
outdoor
stewardship.
classroom, lake
Yeah.
stewardship. We're doing remediation of invasives there and planting native species. We did build a pavilion, which is beautiful, and there's just gorgeous waterfront there. We've done some repairs on retaining walls and ripped out old pressure treated railroad ties that were leaching creosote into the water and so forth. And
Well, that's the
Uh,
main goal, for it to be a lake-friendly example.
yes, so I would say that's a huge win for us in terms of protecting that. It's not a huge piece of land, it's about 3 acres or so, but it does preserve public access to the water, which is pretty much all privatized land all the way around. And so I think
And
that's
it's
a win.
gonna have an educational path too.
Yeah,
so-
there'll be an outdoor classroom and so forth. And so I think I'm really proud of that. Anything else, you guys? Right off the
Yes,
top here?
I have something. The Department of Public Works sent the head guy in to discuss salting the roads
Oh, yes.
and asked our opinion on what would be more environmentally better for the town. And they listened to what we had to say and they switched over to that.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's another thing I think we should think about in the future. I'm not sure what that question is low salt areas around the lakes. There should be low salt. I don't think there's hardly a lake in the state that doesn't have low salt areas to prevent the runoff from,
And tying in with that, Shirley, we also have a program for dust control on our
That's
dirt
great.
roads, which is actually a very good thing for binding the road together, making it less likely that silt will run off into the streams, into our lakes and other water bodies. And obviously, it's a soil conservation and gravel conservation program for the roads, and I'm proud of that. I know that conservation commissions all around tend to support that as a good policy, because again, if you're not controlling the dust, literally material is being lost
Yeah.
in the form of dust. So,
Because yesterday I had the pleasure of being asked to testify at the wake boat hearing in Concord. This was so big that they had it in the legislative house, because there's room for 400 people there instead of a regular meeting room. But anyways, because the wake boats are causing a problem on our lakes. They're it's causing a lot of erosion, and they're also, when they stir up the bottom, that can cause the cyanobacteria problem to increase the blooms. And so anyway, they're hoping to set a 500 feet instead of 150 feet wake zone, and also have wake zone areas where it's deep enough in the lake for wake boats to be able to enjoy what they like to do. Because especially, well, Mascoma is pretty narrow too, but a lake our size is really going to take a beating from wake.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's something that's being worked on. There's a lot of lake-friendly legislation this year.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opposition to lake-friendly legislation too, unfortunately. There was,
On the category of what still needs to be done, I would throw this out there. I may get people throwing things at me, but I think, and we've talked to, actually, the town of Sunapee has actually done this. I think we should implement some kind of regulation for waterfront protection that requires maintenance of septic systems for those people that have waterfront,
Yeah.
particularly. Because I have it on very good authority. Some people come in and say to me, oh, I haven't had to touch my system
Yeah.
in 40 years.
That's very
That's
hard
bad.
too,
That's
that,
bad.
you know, legislation, some type of legislation comes up about that every year. There's so much opposition.
Yeah.
And you know who was the biggest opposer? I was shocked, the real estate industry. They don't want to be bothered with that.
Well, they're not, you can't turn them fast enough if you have to stop to make
Exactly.
improvements.
Yes.
I mean, that's just business.
But I mean, that would be such a, if that had to be done, it would improve our
Oh,
life.
you and that, totally.
Such an important thing.
And here's one more. I just took a call on this last week. And this seems to be coming to an epidemic scale, and that is dog waste. We got to do something about dog waste.
Yes.
I had a person call me
Big-
from Shaker
big topic.
Boulevard,
Yes.
and they said they went for a walk last week after the snow melted,
Oh,
and they just could not
Oh,
believe the amount of
Leave.
dog poop on the side of the road. And he said to me, is that getting into our lakes? And I said, absolutely.
Yes.
Without
Are
a
you on the listserv? Do you?
Oh, yeah. We have it as a,
'Cause
it's a problem on a rail trail. It's a problem on Main Street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's a problem.
we've
I
got
thought
to,
it-
that's an unforced error. We're doing it to ourselves, and there's no need of it. It's just, it's like I said, epidemic.
I happened to catch a man a couple of years ago that was letting his dog go by my mailbox. And I happened to be just looking out at the time, and I went right out and said to him, I carry a bag to pick up my dogs. And he said, I'll go right home and get one. And he did. He came back with one and
Honestly,
picked up.
As we're doing some of these public appearances, one of the things we could do is hand out the ones that are the green bags so that they actually compost.
Yeah.
So I keep extras on me, and when I catch someone doing that, I'm like, oh, you look like you need a bag, and I slap a bag right on them. And because Americans, typically when you reach your hand out as an American, people take whatever you have. I don't try it on me. They have it in their hand before they know what to do, and then they kind of have to do it. So it's a forceful way to do it, but it's not mean, right? It's like hey, you here, let me help you out. And I think we need to do more of that, because if we hold we're the best ones to hold our neighbors accountable.
Cause that is literally E. coli straight into
It's
the lake.
disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
Straight into the lake.
But I think some people just don't connect the dots. You know, I mean, they don't think about it. And, I think if they're educated, then, you know, it
Yeah,
becomes.
some education campaigns and working with the lake associations. I think that would be good for that.
Do you have more on you're done?
No, I just,
So my to-do list, I have the rain gardens, and to really develop and teach people about how to make them, and then look at how we can incentivize it, whether we're providing tools, we're providing education. And Ed and I have had some preliminary talks, and I've mentioned it at the stakeholder meeting about a stormwater utility, because when you look at something like a stormwater utility, now you're putting money to it, right? And you're incentivizing it by rebating. And so I think doing that has the potential to really have a positive impact, where it's not the carrot and the stick method, right? It's a really nice way to do it, to beautify our town. And then the other one I had on my list is storm drains, because I cannot tell you how many people have told me in this town, storm drains go to Lebanon. And I said, no, water and sewer separation, those go to the lake. Please do not throw your cigarette down there again.
Yeah.
I mean, I catch people flicking cigarettes down all the time, and I honestly stop every single one. I'm like, oh, no, we don't throw cigarettes in the lake. And they're like, no, it's a storm drain. And I'm like, no, it's going to the lake.
yeah.
And they are stunned.
Yes.
So some cities and towns paint I'm not a big fan of painting rocks and painting the ground, but I think this is a great area where they put a little fish on it, and it says, this goes to the lake, or this goes to the ocean. And it's it's a stencil. You go, zhoop, and it could be a Boy Scout project or a Girl Scout project or a senior. So it's an
Kids
easy
really
way.
teach our parents a lot.
Yeah.
If you get to the kids, then they will get to the parents lots of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also some talk about regulating fertilizer
Mm.
usage within the 250-foot buffer to the water.
Yeah.
And that you can only do fertilizer if you've had a soil test and you only apply based on what the results of your soil tests are.
That's,
Because a lot of people just like, oh, put 10, 10, 10 on it.
yeah,
Well, you didn't need 10, 10, 10. You needed
I
10,
like-
5, 5, you know, so. And so that's, again, it's nutrients that are getting into our lakes
well,
that are causing our problem with the cyanobacteria.
our lakes are so nutrient rich that they can just pump water from the lake to water their lawn
To
and
fertilize their lawn,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I had a good friend who's a master gardener in Cornish, and she had a huge garden. Mine did much better because, and the only thing I put on it was lake water.
Yeah, you can get what's called a trash pump, and I think we could do some education around that, right? That's what farms
That's
do.
what we have is a pump right out.
You pump from a
by
trash
our
pump
dock.
and
Right, we do it at Lakeside Park. We actually have an
Yeah.
irrigation system down there.
we actually
That's
have
what
one
she
for the
used.
kids that's contained, so it doesn't go back out into the lake. So they pump it into an old hand pump, and then they have water to play with, so they're not using a bucket and stirring up the bottom.
Right.
So it comes in and it's kind of there's all these cool things you can do that you can teach kids and families.
Mhm.
And along that, people need to stop mowing down to the lake. Because if I hear a single other person complain to me about geese after they make the geese a runway to poop on,
What they need to do is put bushes in
Yes.
front of their property that
Yeah.
also keeps it from erosion.
yeah.
And when the grass goes right to the lake, that's,
Yeah, but that they're causing the problem because it's not only erosion, you're also inviting the geese and the geese are gross and they're mean.
They really are.
They really, and so, and you know, I think that just some education around that. Like, I don't care if we're at the farmer's market and we're like, do you like being bit by geese? Maybe we should invite a goose who's really aggressive. Be like, stick your hand in here. Do you want him in front of your house? Don't mow down to the lake.
Well, they don't just come 1, 2, 3, they come like 30,
Oh, yeah.
40.
Mhm. And I'm, you know, honestly,
and
there's a
3
place.
pounds a day is how much they can get rid of.
Oh,
3 pounds.
That's disgusting.
Sorry, because they eat and eat and eat and just go and
No.
go, you know.
And
Are
we,
you
and it,
talking about a?
One goose.
Flock or herd?
No, one goose can do 3 pounds.
30?
three,
Oh.
but still, 3 is.
A lot.
Fortunately, we don't have that many at Crystal Lake, but when we get a family, or we get a pair, and then it becomes a family, and then the 7 of them get up on your lawn in half an hour.
Oh,
you
it's
could have a
awful.
bucket full.
Spectacle Pond has quite a few that land on those like kind of lake lawns.
Yeah.
And then they
that's
come over
the
because
one
they
that
like to
attracts-
lay out and then, so they got permission from Fish and Game to manipulate the eggs in the nest. And I was like,
They like the grass.
yeah, and I have the woods and the shallows where they like to lay, but no grass. So, but they like blueberry bushes too. If you give them some blueberry
Oh,
bushes
yeah.
down front, they'll love you forever. So maybe don't plant those. You know, it's just hard for people.
Excuse me. This is such a valuable time. I would like to talk more about wetlands and wildlife and open spaces and what we're expected to come up with for our master plan. Is that out of
They're
order?
guiding our discussion through questions, so.
Did you get the questions I emailed to you, Lee, this evening?
Yes, I have them on a little miniature phone because I can't run both of these things together. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And, like, what are the future priorities needed to outdoor restoration in Enfield's conservation land? Something like that. I just think this is a very valuable tool we have here to meet and discuss this. I don't know if we're gonna meet again or not.
We're gonna go through all of these questions this evening, is that's correct?
We'll do our best to hit all of them. I'm trying to pick out the most important ones, but I do encourage you that ultimately at the end of the day, we want to make sure we hear the burning important items that you brought here tonight or that you want to make sure that we hear. So at any point, we're happy to just hear those popcorn style to make sure that we come away with that information. So before I move on, is there anyone that has anything burning they want to say about future priorities related to land and water conservation, outdoor recreation, natural resource protection?
Yeah, to me, the number one thing on my list is cyanobacteria. We've been on the lake for over 20 years and it's only recently become an issue and it's becoming more and more of an issue every year. Last year, I think we closed the lake 5 times. You know, and it was unheard of even 5 years ago, so
See, the warming and the phosphorus is bad, both.
it's
the warming of the
becoming a
water.
real serious problem and, I have grandchildren and I really kind of get nervous about them going in the water and keeping their head underwater a lot, and it makes me sad that I have to feel that way, so anything we can do to eradicate that problem, I am for.
Well, each person cope with that on their own property by, if you do things that keep from stormwater runoff from, and that's a huge help. If
Yeah, but I
you
don't
get
have
all
any
people to
control
do that.
over that.
Right, because like Carol's done that work already, right? Like,
know,
she
a lot of
professionally
people
hired
have.
somebody, but how do you incentivize and get other people to do it?
Well,
We've done a lot on our property to
I've done it on
prevent
mine.
it from happening. We spent a lot of money doing it in the process. But when you got a storm like on July 9th, that just makes all of this stuff flow down the mountainside into the lake.
Well, I think, you
Just-
know, you have people who've built over the years in existing areas that were always very, very wet historically because lake properties at a premium and then someone decided to put a bunch of lots in, right? And it got easy. Now the house is there. No one's gonna agree to tear down her home, right?
No.
It's too valuable. And so you're already impinging upon what probably should have been a protected area. So how do you incentivize the people who are already in an area that maybe has more than enough houses to like make the water, to catch the water and put it into the soil instead of sending it quickly into the lake?
Mhm.
You know, how do we teach them and how do we incentivize that?
And how do we make that happen on a bigger scale?
you just,
Well,
there are people who are open to
Yeah.
listening.
That's a good answer. I mean, that's one step, yeah.
What's-
I like what Rob said about, I think fertilizer, I mean, that's something that doesn't need to be done close to the lake. I think of that buffer.
But it's hard to
restricting for-
convince people,
I-
that want that green
Can I-
lawn.
Can I tell
Well,
you that I
geez.
don't understand fertilizer at all and I have a farm? Like, I understand testing your soil, but like farmers don't go dumping fertilizer for no reason because it's very expensive. You don't dump fertilizer wholesale and there are amendments that are safe, right? So maybe should we as an organization look at what kind of amendments are the most safe around? And one of the amendments that's the most safe is pumping it back out of the lake, right?
Yeah.
That's considered an amendment. So, because you don't, and it's more economically feasible to probably pump that water than it is to dump. I mean, come on, the next person who dumped Scott plus weed killer next to the lake should be
Oh,
drawn and quartered.
Our biggest enemy is big agriculture because they're selling the stuff. You know what I mean? They're pushing it, beautiful lawns,
So
beautiful
what if
lawns.
we as a team did a bit of a campaign, like when we're in the newsletter and we're on public, that is like, did you know you don't have to pay big ag to have a beautiful lawn, right? Do we go back at them and say, you have a beautiful resource right in front of you that can give you a lawn that's just as beautiful for almost free? Like, can we do it in a way that's,
We define beauty, some people, I have a family member next to me, he thinks his lawn needs to be a golf course and it
Yeah.
looks like a golf course.
that's it.
To me,
The eyes of the.
that's not what we need. I mean, it's anti what we need,
I don't,
but in his mind, that's beauty.
Yeah,
So
it's
how
hard
do
to
you,
change that.
how do you change someone's mind?
We need to be replacing lawns with bushes and plants and,
Native species. and- yeah.
native.
so
species.
I have, somebody wrote me, I run a business, right? And so farm businesses, somebody always has an opinion and eventually and they were like, you have very nice dogs, but I don't know about your landscaping. And did you see that one that day? And I was like, because I run chicken, I don't mow my lawn, I run chicken tractors. I very rarely mow and I might mow in between the middle. And if I mow, I'm collecting it and I'm feeding it back to my livestock. And my cows mow, my cows do all the trimming, right? And then there's a little bit near the house, but we shouldn't be mowing, right? Like, so Yeah, I think the redefining beauty, I laughed so hard and I was like, well, I got up this morning and I was like, how can I make that guy on the internet really upset about my lawn? But we have all, can we give out free seeds, like, as we're doing our education?
Yeah, good.
How about having a contest for the ugliest lawn?
I love it. That would be, no, you're onto something there. I
I
think,
don't call it
yeah.
ugly.
no, but you have to call it ugly because ugly is trendy. Right? Ugly is trendy and thrifting
Yeah.
is trendy.
Like the New Hampshire Lakes does a lake spot program, and if you pass, they'll help you if you have things you need to do to, because they have, in addition to the rain gardens, a lot of different things that you can do for your yard. And you get a sign that you can post that you're a lake friendly, you're a water.
What if we like pitch it as frugal, not fancy, right? Or, you know what I mean?
Liz had something she was gonna say. Liz?
I was just gonna note, so one topic we haven't talked too much about, except for a little bit in relation to the Trails Master, is outdoor recreation specifically. And I'm just curious to hear about any conversations you've been having in regards to the future of outdoor recreation in Enfield, and just have some thoughts to share on that.
Like hiking trails.
If it'll stop raining, maybe we could do it.
Well, I think Craig Sanborn would be a good person to loop into one of these meetings. And he's our trail master. And when Craig came to us, he had done a really nice inventory of things that should be replaced, the why, and done a nice budget. And he proposes materials that aren't going to degrade and cause the bridge to fall in the brook. And I think doing some of those pieces will help with a conservation component also. And then in terms of how we do outdoor recreation, this is a good time of year that we could do some education around, like, maybe give the trails a break for 5 minutes, right? So.
Yeah. I just want to ask the rest of you, Jerry's been on the commission for a long time. And are you all agreeable if he feels that something we've missed that should be added, that Jerry contributes to the conversation?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
all,
think that you have a lot of knowledge that, and we could have skipped over something you feel is very important, Jerry.
you should sit up here though. so
Yes,
they
please.
can hear you better.
Anybody want an Altoid? I got them right here.
Oh my gosh. You know my weakness.
You like them?
I quit eating them because I used to eat like 2 packs a day.
Pass them around. Slide them to Jerry. And just pass them all the way around. Anybody needs them. Thank you.
What has he got? What am I missing?
Altoids.
Altoids.
Not candy.
Please let us know, Jean and Lee, whenever you want to contribute here. Because I don't see where it's generally a hand you can raise if you want to say something, but I don't see that.
Well, one of the things that I would like to say that covers all of these areas really is the importance of controlling development and the attraction of populations to this community. There is a significant amount of problems with more people. They contribute to the trash. They contribute to the pollution from the air as the cars go by here. They contribute to abuse of wildlife habitat by their own manipulations and their own activities, off-road vehicles and so forth. There's plenty of data that shows that noise is a detriment to the maintenance of wildlife. Now, the important thing is understanding what a carrying capacity of a community actually is. The carrying capacity is the necessity of providing resources to support the population that is there, not just the human population, but a wide variety of other animals. One of the major factors of population of a carrying capacity is its water. All animals need good water, good food, good air, and a safe place to live. Those are the 4 major qualities that all wildlife and humans require. And the more you impact an environment to basically put pressure on those important commodities, the less the environment itself can maintain its standard position or its normal position. So the habitat has to deteriorate. Nobody knows for sure what the carrying capacity of this community is. But it should be something that people keep in mind. They've had to dig 2 new wells for the municipal system last year. Last year, the municipal system used 32 million gallons of water. That's 470 homes. Now, Jim Taylor told me that a lot of water was lost because of the breaking of the pipes. And that's another thing. The infrastructure of the pipes here is significantly poor. Some of these pipes have been in the ground, according to Jim Taylor, for over 100 years, and they are deteriorating. So those are the factors from the standpoint of human population that needs to be considered. Trash is another. The more people that are here, the more trash is produced. The more trash is produced, the larger the volume that has to go to the landfill. And now the trash from the landfill is being trucked to Bethlehem. That is increasing the amount of energy that's needed to travel to carry that stuff, because the Lebanon landfill is no longer available. And we don't have a landfill here in Enfield because the property is basically too valuable and not suitable for that kind of an environment. So those are the things that we really need to consider when we start developing land. Now, I realize that land is all owned in the publics by private individuals. And you really can't control what they're going to do unless you provide an education to show them these are the consequences of developing properties. And those, I think, are the things that really need to be done, because they not only affect the welfare of this community for people, but they also affect it for wildlife. Now, chipmunks and deer don't pay taxes and they don't vote. And consequently, in developing master plans, they're not very well considered. But they are part of the ecosystem, and they do contribute to the wildlife and the value of a community like Enfield. And so that's something I think that the master plan really needs to think about. They're esoteric to some extent. They're not easy to quantify. But if you don't start thinking in terms of 25 or 50 years from now, rather than next month or next year or next tax season, you have the potential of destroying this community in many, many ways.
Well said, Jerry. I think, just for the record, you could sum it up by saying somehow teaching the people the consequences of a bad land ethic. People need to understand what the consequences are of not taking care of the land. I mean, that's, somehow that needs to be part of the master plan, and that's education.
See, and I feel humans are a creature just like animals, and I'm not saying they're more or less important, but they have to be housed. And we have a significant unhoused population that a lot of people, Enfield's a very privileged community. We have about 4% poverty. It's very, very low. And so, but I interact with people who are very, very poor every day. If you don't house them and house them appropriately, it creates unsafe situations that can impact the environment. I'd really like us to follow the master plan's guidance and master plan, like phase 1, and make sure that we're doing the consolidation and doing the work so that, I don't think of downtown as being the lake. I think of it being more into the kind of commercially section. You're not going to get more. I think we need to be really careful about developing more along the lake, but we're looking obviously at the zoning project at the same time. And I think we need to be putting in proper guardrails so that we allow, because if you can't make it punitive, right? Because then you get sued for not having, New Hampshire has very specific laws on having affordable housing. You can't not have it. So we need to put proper guardrails in place so that we're consolidating, so people are driving less. And that the answer to driving less and using less infrastructure and paving less and less lights and trucking is to kind of pull people in a responsible way into the downtown area on water and sewer, where you are
Yeah.
have your resources.
And it's less expensive for the town
Sure.
to,
And you can walk.
and it saves the open spaces.
Yeah.
It saves the rural
Yeah.
area. And
Mindful
like I
develop-
said, I think it should be done very thoughtfully with the zoning and planning and conservation, the people that are involved in the different areas to listen to each other or, share their information.
And I picked on myself during the zoning meeting and you heard me. So I live in the upper corner, right? Like I live in
Yeah.
no man's land, which everyone's always like, no one lives out there. And I'm like, that's me, above Spectacle Pond. And my husband and I bought 70 acres to preserve, and keep it on the farm. But and have done a lot of conservation work to keep the trails open for animals. It could easily be a large development, right?
Mhm.
We wanted to protect that area of town, but here's the thing, no one in a day like this should live out there because you're so far from resources. But when it was built, you were just going down the hill on the potato road to take potatoes to the train to go to Boston. So I think we have to be mindful of how the times change and how infrastructure changes us. And infrastructure has made a huge change. I don't think the interstate or downtown is ever gonna go away. I don't think we're ever gonna see a big shift unless we allow it in this day and age. And we're lucky enough to have zoning and be able to put up those guardrails. So it's not that I love my neighbors. I love my new neighbors. I just think it would be dangerous to have like a cluster development out there because, and more salt, right? You're gonna have to salt it.
I know.
Mhm.
No, I agree.
It is more cost, a lot of conversations we've had at public meetings lately are about the tax rate in the town. And, that would be much more costly to have developments out where it's harder to get the services to them. And you have to think about that too. It's, people are already finding
Is-
that, the taxes are
But
high.
you have to the reality of it is people are having babies.
And they have to have a place to live, yeah.
Yeah. And, what are we gonna do? Tell everybody you can only have one child?
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's just, the population is going to grow whether we want it or not. What we have to do
Mhm.
is have a really good plan
Yeah.
to take care of the reality of the situation. You're not gonna sterilize the community so that,
Why, do you see
Well,
that,
the
a
reality
move
of
towards
the
that?
situation is that the community itself can only sustain so many people.
But we're not.
We're not responsible for housing the people in all of New Hampshire.
But like we let you move here and build a house and we, you know what I mean? Like we allow people to move here. So who are we morally to pick who gets to live here and not? So I think you give it the guardrails. And I think one of the things in community that we used to have as an agrarian community was that people lived with their families, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things we're talking about in zoning is, can you have more than one primary building?
Mhm.
The answer in Enfield right now is no, right? But is there a benefit to it where you would not be continuing to sprawl out and you would be able to support each other? So looking at some of these pieces and allowing families and family units to stay together and make good choices. We can't pick morally on
Yeah.
people who.
Well, I think the first phase of the master plan, they really did a good job on also finding out what the community, the people who are here really want, the way they want to see the community go and where they want to, where they think it's best. I think it's a good plan. So,
Can I ask a question? Is there a limit on the amount of water that is available for public use? And is there a limit on the amount of sewer that can be pumped to Lebanon, such as the people that are on it? Like say some big housing development came in, huge, and they wanted everything pumped to, is there a limit of what can be drawn from the water source and what can be pumped to Lebanon? Is there a limit? If everybody flushed the toilet at the same time, what would happen?
So it's a two-part answer, right? So
Okay.
there's always a limit to everything in life. So that's the easy answer. The question is, what is it? So on the water, we have a couple limitations, and that one is the quality and the speed at which the gallons per minute that we get, right? And the other one, and then the other one is, back in the day, we tested for radon. Now we found uranium in the downtown well, and that is the reason we didn't run out of water in downtown and go drilling wells for fun. We have a water quality issue, and the number of ppms, which is the parts per million, right, that are considered safe, so the good tasting water had uranium, so you can only put in a certain amount of ppm, like you want to stay well under. And so, and the kind of, if you increase the water that doesn't have it, that one has a sulfur smell. Now it's safe to drink, right? So so the goal was there when we did this water project, and it wasn't just like, we picked a number.
I didn't see them get it.
We have an entire water and sewer set of plans. So we did a full study on both. And so we know what we would have to do and how much we can project. The new wells that have just come online, I think we're still learning a little bit about and how they're going to act. But then we know if we had a large development, we'd have to drill some more. The sewer, we know exactly how many gallons we can ship because we have a contract. And I think, are we at about third? We're nowhere near what we're allowed to.
We have 300,000 gallons of capacity that we can use, but we
Wow.
currently use about 70 or 75.
Hence the desire to get those other places online, right?
And keep them from potentially leaching
Right.
into our waterways.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's good.
As far as water is concerned, though, the town does not have a source of water from a river. They all depend upon the wells, and those are aquifers that are filled as a result of drainage of snow melt and rainwater through the ground into wetlands, and then along those channels into eventually the wells that are there. Now, all the wells that supply Enfield are along Highway 4. Some of them are actually in property that is owned by Canaan that was in the Canaan district, but the town bought the land. Whether or not the wells that they drilled last year have simply put another straw into the same aquifer or have actually hit new aquifers is not known. So you may simply be drilling holes into the same basis of water, and the ability of those aquifers to fill depends upon the pressure of water that's coming down. Now, if there's climate change that's going on, that could result in drought, and therefore the water that's available in those wells could drop dramatically. The McConnell well, which produces the largest amount of water, is the one that's got the alpha radiation in it. And Jim Taylor tells me that they only use that in emergency situations. It's not something that's put into the rest of the town's well water. The town has also opened 2 car washes here. One at the Blackwater Road area and one in Jake's just across the street from Main Street. Now, those people recycle their water, but how they recycle it depends upon the quality of the wash water they're using. If they're just putting it through a exchange system, then the water that they've got has got some more salt in it, and you're just washing your car with salt water. If they put it through a reverse osmosis process, they may be able to clean it up more. But I think those are the things that you have to think about, because car washes they're on the municipal system, and they have a potential of using a fair amount of water. They're paying for it, but nevertheless, those are the kind of infrastructures that may be a contributor to loss of, or the lock of water is if the drainage system here or the rainfall ceases to be as prolific as it has been in the past. That's what I'm saying is you've got to think about 25, 30, 40 years from now, where you're going to be with regard to those kinds of things, and leave enough margin of error that if it goes against what you're thinking about, you still have the capacity to absorb it, to make sustainable living for all of the creatures here a possibility.
Jean had her hand up
Okay.
a minute ago. I don't know if she
Respond to that.
or not.
Jean did?
Yes.
Would you like to speak, Jane?
Well, if you want to respond to that, I can hold my comment, but yeah, I did have my hand up, but
Yeah, it's a quick 2 second, because I was concerned about the car wash. Not because, so we don't have a laundromat anymore. The laundromat did not recycle any water. It all went down. And I believe, Rob, and we won't know until we see how this new car wash goes, but I don't think the projections were up and above our laundromat usage yet.
Yeah, and they both, to your point, they both
Both
have
recycle.
reverse osmosis.
So that was,
Oh,
yeah,
they
they
do?
do, yes. And they weren't above, so the average home car wash, because there was hot conversation on the listserv recently that said it was cheaper to wash your car at either the two car washes. The average home car wash is 100 gallons of water, which you were pouring just out into the environment on the ground with soap,
But
right?
you
So-
should watch where that runs off.
Right, so I'm just saying that, like, we can, because I was trying to think about it objectively, like, what would you do if you didn't go to the car wash? So you're putting 100 gallons of water and chemicals onto the ground at your home, untreated and uncontained. And you use significantly less, and there's different averages for different styles of car washes. It's $2.93 of water cost to use that water. So I just thought that was an interesting, and it really made me think about, because I was like, oh yeah, the car wash is gonna use a lot, but it actually uses less than if you did it at home. So when we have a water ban, I'm assuming the car wash would be subject. I'm on the select board and I'm a water and sewer commissioner, so I'm gonna go ahead and say, if we had a severe water shortage, you know, we don't let people wash their car at home. We don't let them water their garden. It's a business risk, but I think, you know, it's like, not all development is bad. Some things are better and safer. So,
So it's important to know where our aquifers are too, and to protect them when.
Good point,
Yes.
good point. But as Jerry said, you know, we don't. I mean, we could be sticking multiple straws into the same aquifer.
we do. We have
We have
an
a field?
entire, they
We
have
have a
an,
field?
you don't know everything
No, I know.
underground, but
Yeah.
yeah, we have an
Gene-
entire water
Gene-
plan online.
Okay.
Jean was waiting to
Yeah.
speak.
Oh, sorry,
after
Jean.
Someone finished, yes. Okay, Jean.
that's okay. That's okay. This is all, you know, again, I'm new, so I'm learning a lot right now. But it seems that and I'm just getting acquainted with the master plan as well, but it seems that ideally we need to have a conservation plan that is hand in glove with the master plan that looks at, you know, all the aspects of the town, and does take that longer view. And I don't know if there are already these projections in it, you know, a set of assumptions as to what are the resources that we're going to need, all of us, humans, wildlife, everybody, to have a quality of life that's reasonable in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and kind of work backwards from that to say, what are the actions? And many of them have been listed out here in this discussion, this kind of lively list of things that people are doing. But, you know, it's all got to fit together. It's one system. All of this is one system. And so I would hope that the master plan can tell us, here's what it's going to look like. You know, what effect is climate change having? 50% more of, I do know 50% more of precipitation has come in the form of water this year than snow. Used to be 50-50, and it made a radical change this year. What's the impact of that to all these systems that we're talking about? So I think that, you know, the way I view things, I would hope that the master plan can contemplate the assumptions that we ought to be making, and make some projections as to what is the water situation going to be in, let's just take 25 years. Let's have a 25-year horizon. What is the weather projections? I know they're kind of moving right now, but what is that going to look like? And then how do we walk that back to what do we need to be doing now, and help using this group of all the people doing all these efforts that are great. And I think, Kate, you made the term guardrails. And how is it that we have to then act as citizens and build a culture that where conservation is not a little group to the side? And I'm not saying it is. It sounds like people here are very, very conservation oriented, but how does this all fit together so that people so that there can be education and orientation at all levels, adults and children, to say, here's how to sustain ourselves, we can live, and we can end up with enough resources, and paint some scenarios for us. If we don't do that, what's it going to look like? If we do that, how much water is there going to be per person, that kind of thing. I think we got to see how this all fits together.
Yes.
Good point.
Mhm. I think that's a plan that Crystal and Liz will come up with a plan for us, and then we have to be the ones
To
who
enact it.
make it work. Yes,
Well,
Mhm.
the
follow it. I
the
think.
master plan is considering Enfield. But you've got a community to the north of you, east of you, Canaan, that has just cleared a large acreage of land for a development. Now, the Mascoma watershed covers over 250 square miles or more. It's in our Conservation Commission meeting, and that water is going to run off of those lands when the roads are put through there so that the water doesn't seep into the ground, and it's going to run into the Mascoma River. The Mascoma River virtually surrounds the town of Enfield. And floods come as a result of some of that kind of development. The other thing that happens for wildlife is that the roads here are constantly being transecting of wildlife habit of corridors. And the more of those roads that are set in there, the more difficult it is for animals to get across them safely. And we don't build, unfortunately, tunnels under those roads because they're more expensive to do. So this is something that is important if you're going to continue to maintain things like turtles and lizards and other kinds of animals that cross on the roads, and they're not necessarily very visible. You get a moose on the road and you hit it, you are in real trouble personally. If you get a deer on the road and hit it, you can also have significant damage to your car and maybe to yourself. You run over a turtle, nobody cares.
Oh.
That's right.
Yes.
You ever see anybody stop and run over a turtle and pick it up and bury it?
I don't run them over. I go get them.
That was just me.
Well, that's right, but
But every year, they cross our roads.
anyway, those are the kind of things from the standpoint of the density and building stuff that needs to be thought of
Plenty of
in
turtles.
advance.
I have a shovel. You know those winter collapsible shovels? You just leave it in your car and it turns into a
You
turtle
should
shovel.
see some of ours.
Cause they bite.
I just want to be respectful of
Sorry.
Liz and Crystal. We're running out of time with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
What else would you like from us, Liz and Crystal? Anything else?
I would say that the only question that we didn't get to, we touched on some of the other ones that we didn't directly talk about. But the one piece we've alluded to a little bit here and there, but I just wanted to make sure I heard everything from you all related to it. What do you think are some of the biggest barriers to increasing land conservation and also just natural resource protection measures in town? I've already heard a little bit about lack of education. What are some of the other pieces of the puzzle do you think are important for us to be aware of?
I have a thought.
Mhm.
We're the Conservation Commission. We have a selectman representation, and we have a good one. She understands us and she's easy to work with. Then you have the planning board. Then you have the ZBA. I think we need to understand the workings of each one and try to collaborate together on if we have a goal of something, then we can go and make sure they understand why and what we're trying to accomplish. So they can help make an informed judgment as to which way they're going to vote on. I mean, I've been reading tonight because I have about each each government body and how they work. I know before we have a meeting, we do a lot of studying and research. Then I hope each body, the selectmen, they all do the same. So if we come before them with a project or we're challenging something from the state or a building project, they'll know why and what. It's not a question. It's my thought to make the Conservation Commission function better and function stronger. So I don't know how that would do, but I know everybody has to work together. I just don't know how many of them know what we do.
It's a barrier.
But that's why I thought it.
I see a barrier, as town folks, financial fear is a barrier, to change, to conservation, you know, when you think about it, conservation should be about saving money, but I don't think people always see it that way. You know, they see development is increasing the tax base and bringing more money in and saving them money, but in the long run, it may not. So I think those financial fears is a barrier that we need to identify, and it's not an easy one to identify.
I think there's a balance.
Yeah.
That we need to.
Yeah, I hear you.
And working together is the only way we can have that.
I would say one of the biggest barriers with my select board hat on is dealing with the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
They are slow at permitting. They are horrifically slow. So when you have a culvert problem and it's a real problem and it's pouring silt or whatever, it's crushed and it's ruining the surrounding area, it is really hard to get them on it. And at the same time, we have people who want to do things that are responsible. They might tell you on a road, well, the sight line doesn't work here. I mean, come on, it's New Hampshire. There's none of the sight lines work, right? You got a telephone pole, you got a tree, you got a rock. And they're like, so you need to run your driveway a long way, right? It's the curb cuts. Like when we asked for a reasonable, nice side curb cut to go underneath the building straight in, they said no, and they made an outdoor parking lot. So you have less and you'll have less permeable space. So I think that the state restricts a lot of our ability to make good community decisions. I'm gonna pick on them until I.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about that.
It's
And
just-
that goes back to who we're electing to those positions. Voters ultimately are responsible for who goes to represent us. And I see over and over again on the ballots, people running unopposed. There's just one name running. And that involves the state legislator as well as the local. That's another thing that we need to do, if we try at least, is to encourage people to become more involved in considering who the elected officials or the candidates they're voting for. What do they stand for? Don't just look at them on the basis of how they part their hair or how charismatic they sound. What do you believe about this? The other thing is that whenever I see candidates coming to talk to potential voters, they all come down to Manchester, or Nashville, or Concord. I never see anybody come up here to Enfield. We need to try and get a better distribution of people that are running so we can actually go to their talks and listen to them and ask them questions. I don't know how you do that, but my point is that we're not really getting into the democratic stream like we should.
I mean, I have every one of our people, and it's not because I'm on the select board, but because New Hampshire has the highest ratio of representation, right, in the country. We have the biggest legislature. So like you all know, David Fract represents Enfield. So it's a straight up way, right? You can get his number and call him. And I think like Sue Prentice is very available. I happen to have one of the governor candidates. So I think you can get that here if you want, but nothing that won't change DOT, right? And it won't change DES. And because those are administrative rules and the trickle down is slow.
This is right. Raising fire with stealing flint. A good bit of smoke before it becomes flame.
So on the biggest barriers, along with the financial, I would say it's not just financial though, it's cost to do the right thing. So as opposed to cost to do the wrong thing, you have cost to do the right thing. And we have people, we have cases where people need a septic, again, we'll go back to that one, and they aren't able to afford to do the right thing. So we're very lucky to have a really good human services director who knows how to help people apply for USDA type loans. That's a tool that I don't know if you guys know, but it's something we can help people if we know. So maybe we should be doing some education around that. Like, don't let your septic go bad because you can't afford it. We have somebody here, and she's very nice, right? It's like not a judgy thing. No one takes your picture and puts you on a poster. She sits down and she helps you figure it out. Like, could you qualify for like, I think some of those loans are like 1%.
Because a lot of people may not be aware that help's available.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So even if you're not near and it's not a town project, trying to protect it, you could still, and at 1%, how can you argue? I mean, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money, but
Yeah,
But
that's a
that
good,
does
that's a,
go back to-
that's a,
Does go back to, hopefully there'll be legislation passed to require people to keep their septic systems value tested and have to replace them if they're bad, because it's bad news for our water.
Well, it's like Crystal Lake. There's no public beach there, so the Department of Public Health in New Hampshire doesn't test that water. I've been testing that water, and I'm finding Enterococcus in it. Enterococcus by the Department of Public Health is the organism they use to indicate human sewage contamination of the water. Now, whether it's one organism or a billion organisms, the point is that is primarily coming in those houses that surround the lake from their septic system leach field leaking. Not being able, the soil between that and the lake, not being able to absorb and hold the material that's coming out of that leach field. Now, that is not a contemporary fault. Those houses were built there probably before most of the setback regulations were ever made. But now some of those houses are being converted into two-story year-round residents as opposed to camps that were occupied for a couple of months out of the year. They're putting in washing machines, they're putting in dishwashers, the quantity of water that's coming out of those houses is dramatically increasing on a year-round basis. And if they don't have a septic system and a leach field, and many of those properties are so small, lot-wise, that they don't have the land to absorb that material. Those are the problems that we're faced with and are going to continue to be a problem because there's no way of getting rid of those houses.
That's a barrier. Regulations, I guess, would be needed.
Well, have regulations changed in the last 20 years? When we bought our place, the first thing we had to do was take a look at the horrible septic system that was on site and replace it.
Okay.
And we put in a plan to replace it and it got approved and we needed to make sure that the land was going to be able to accept a new septic system, that it wasn't going to be impossible to do. And we got that done. And we got a new system in, and then we started with our project to
So
renovate.
there are sometimes that people get, when they go through that process, they choose someone who rubber stamp it for them.
But I don't think when you're transferring a property, the trigger on septics in my understanding, isn't the transfer of the deed, right? I don't believe there's a requirement to have a passing septic on transfer of deed. It is, did you finance your home? So if you don't finance your home, and let's be honest, a lot of homes up here right now on lakes are transferring in cash to cash buyers. And if you transfer to a cash buyer, I'm gonna tell you, my septic didn't have to be inspected.
Oh.
And I just spent like 25 grand to put a new one in because it's the right thing to do, but there was no requirement.
So those of us
have to have
that
any
can't
inspection.
afford to pay cash for a house have to do the right thing.
You work 100 hours and never sleep.
See, there are people
Gotta
who
buy a less
avoid
fancy
doing the
house,
right
right?
thing.
You gotta buy a broken house.
Yeah, well, we did.
Because I heard
And you
of
fix-
one,
And we fixed it.
a sale where
Twice.
they had it inspected and the person was good and said it didn't pass. Well, they just got someone else to inspect it.
Ah.
That would pass it.
See, that should be reportable.
Yeah, that's regulatory shopping. Yes.
It's like, this isn't a bank for a mortgage.
But no, there are no
I'm sorry.
regulations on whether,
terrible.
it's all depends on how much you want to protect
Happens every day.
yourself. Now, unfortunate for the waterways because they are being, a lot of what's going into them.
So I will say, we've had a great conversation and I think Liz and Crystal are probably ready to go.
Should we email if somebody thinks?
Yes, if you think of anything,
Please do. Yes, please do.
and chances are really good that you will.
Or if there's.
Send them to me and I'll get them to
They
Liz.
need information too.
Oh, yes. And there will be, we've actually scheduled 2 events already for May 9th, which is a Thursday, and May 11th, which is a Saturday. I think May 9th is going to be like 6 to 8 in the evening. And May 11th, it'll be like 10 to 12 in the morning. Both of them are looking like they're going to be at the community building downtown. And those will be sort of public input sessions, which you guys are welcome to come to, obviously, as members of the public. And we'll be obviously gathering tons of information between now and then too. And then I believe, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys will do, after the public events, you'll do opportunity for people to electronically share their knowledge and opinions
Yes.
online, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
So thank you, guys. We really appreciate it. I think we had a really great discussion here. And thank you for all the great work that you guys do.
Well, we
Really is.
appreciate being part of this. It's
Yes.
exciting.
You guys are a good
Yes.
team.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your feedback. We really appreciate it. And as Rob said, feel free to send us anything in writing that you have. Send it to him and he'll send it to us that we didn't get to tonight. So we appreciate that. All right, have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Have
a good night.
Those to Rob, so if you want to send something to him, get it to Rob and
Right.
pass it on.
Is that the end of the, I'm not trying to stir.
See you guys.
Pardon me?
I'm at it out.
Oh, you are?
Are we done?
Over 12 hours.
It's
Okay.
I've been
See
working.
ya.
Well, being, thank you very much, Rob. Being, 8:35, if there isn't any urgent new business, does anyone have any urgent new business?
Can I just ask one thing, because I promised in the select board meeting, I would ask, when the health officer came for our annual meeting, when he started giving this great information on cyanobacteria and septics, I asked him, would you be willing, would you be willing to have me approach the Conservation Commission and chat with the chair and the members and, ask them if he could come to one of the meetings, and he said he would be happy to. So I wanted to bring that forward to you. I know, and wherever you need it in your schedule or want it and feel it's helpful, but Liam said he could do so. And if so, I can connect him with you, but
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
what he said to us was really great.
It
And
was.
I like this conversation about how we, and what, to Lee's point, about how we intersect as committees and how we can support each other and share knowledge.
Yeah, and then getting more knowledge is just only gonna make us stronger and.
Right.
Right, and
our
like,
point.
Look, you're taking it back to the classroom and teaching the next generation. I think it's fabulous.
And to our neighbors.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, one other quick thing to think about. We got something from the New Hampshire Conservation Commission and just thinking about Earth Day. A lot of conservation commissions do something special for Earth Day. And we might want to think about that for this year or next year to,
It's coming up in April.
May,
yes.
It's April.
April?
Yeah, it's in April.
I mean, if we could do something that didn't take a lot of planning for this year,
April
but
22nd.
put your thinking caps on and, if you have any ideas, let's just discuss them And I think it'd be great myself for us to.
Do you want us to just email you some ideas and,
Pardon me?
do you want us to email you ideas?
Yeah, that would be good.
This April.
Yeah, so we're gonna,
It's coming fast. But
I mean, if I can,
in,
or do you wanna just throw out a couple right now, cause we won't have time to meet before then? Well, we will have one meeting,
yeah, we
right?
will.
So if we email you, we could look at all of our
Yeah.
ideas.
I mean,
Yeah.
basic ideas are cleanups, you know what I mean? That tends to be a common theme people do, you know.
Right.
picking
Yeah,
things
Well,
up.
there is a
Public
townwide cleanup
Association does
and,
that,
I
that.
forgot something. The soak up the rain, remember we were doing March? Patty came to me and asked if we could reschedule with UNH. And I think that's a really good idea because we've got so much groundwater right now, we're not gonna be able to do an onsite.
Mhm.
So are you guys okay with pushing that out and asking UNH what they could give us on their future schedule so that we can do the actual education piece?
Yeah.
The right guns, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a delay because we don't want to do it. It's really a practical, because when you said the water, we were talking about digging into that lakeside park and I really feel uncomfortable digging into it when it's full of water.
Yeah.
Everything.
Well, let us know the news so we can be sure and get that out to people.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I totally spaced that.
So email ideas to Shirley, you got anything for her birthday? Wanna do something, okay?
Cleanup would be
Yeah.
good, but, the Muskoma Lake Association does
Yeah.
one.
We do too,
And
and the
Eva-
townwide,
Eva
Crystal does one,
Yeah.
and, the town, we do it on the same day as the town does now.
What's the
The
Eva
Eva,
one?
I mean, Eva.
Yeah, what day do they usually do?
It's generally, it hasn't been set yet, but it's generally the week before Memorial Day that
I'm
they
like-
do theirs.
I admin their page and I don't know.
But I haven't heard anything from them. But,
I'm looking up last year.
isn't it around a week before Memorial Day?
Usually.
That's when we tended, we actually did ours long before they started theirs. They came to us for, to see how we organized it.
What about on something like that? Like a little, just an easy, quick sticker where we were like, you know, be a junior conservation member, bring your family, and we have family, give a family, like adult kid bag and give them all a sticker and send them out. I don't know, just a kid like stickers.
Oh, I'll read up on some. see
Yeah.
What everybody else does,
Yeah.
Yeah,
reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
there's a,
I don't have much.
there's a conservation listserv where, different conservation commissions are sharing ideas too of what they do. I'll get that up and anyone can join it if they want.
May 22nd was in
Yeah.
2020. People were really psyched because they had an activity.
I don't know if their website is
May what?
current, but they've got May 13th and 14th and 20th and 21st.
Yep, here's the 21st.
Is it clean? That's right, they
Oh,
did
that's
do it
right.
2
They have a-
weekends,
They have a
last year.
contest for for an item, right?
because we let,
Best item.
Oh, yeah. Weirdest.
people signed up for when they were available to do it. But we're gonna go back to doing, we always had a meet and greet where people came and we had, breakfast pastries, you know, and coffee and stuff and chatted at the,
Yeah.
and, that was fun. And we stopped that when COVID came and people just signed up and did a certain area. But it was much more fun when we got together.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go back to that this year.
Divide and conquer.
Pardon me?
We'd get together, then we'd go out and divide and conquer.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it was much more fun, being out there all the same day. The last few years, people have chosen when it was a good time for them to go out and do it. But, which is good, Sandra.
Hey, can I
You
ask
can't
you
be
a
there.
question? When we get the agenda in the mail
Yeah,
and we get all of that stuff from DES.
yeah.
I read through it, I get befuddled, and then I read through it again, and I try and understand it. So what I did this time was I made a list of each thing
Mhm.
and made comments about it. So if we were gonna, like, I know Jerry used to go into detail about a lot of those
Yeah.
things. We're not gonna get to it tonight, but I
Yeah.
figured this list would help us to go through it real quickly, because a lot of it is just.
Right,
information.
a lot of it
Yeah.
is just in, if there's not a,
Yeah.
and it's good to go through ahead too, to see if there's anything we need to address. And, that's what I do. But-
We should zip through it and then, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff.
And
that's
then
just-
when we get to the meeting, the things that we figure we need to address, then we can spend the time on those.
So
Yeah.
I did an outline. Do you want me to send it, pass it around?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll take,
yeah.
I'll take a copy. If you make copies for everybody, I'd gladly take a copy.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you use two sides of the
Let's see
paper.
what- oh,
That's like manipulation with my lousy old $69 printer.
What do we got here?
Oh, the,
You made a
all of
list of the email,
that
of the
31-page
correspondence.
packet.
It just consolidated
I
a bit
went
to
through it
our,
all and gave it a title and,
Yes.
a lot of it's informational,
Yeah.
but it just,
Yeah. And you can see out there how long,
I'm on here,
you're on there.
except I didn't write the letter.
how long it's
That's what we
taken
have
them
that
to
for.
respond, how
You
long
got
it's
credit.
been with the, permits for Whitney Hall.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
and that's a really important permit, right?
Yeah,
It's really important to model good behavior to your people in your town, so.
yeah.
I'm proud of us for doing the right thing and going through the process, and then, that's something I could give you an update on too. As they were digging, so back in the day, if you burnt down, what did you do? You pushed it into the river? Right, I'm not saying the town did it, I don't know what happened, but we found organic matter underneath when they were digging, so they put in helical pile, and coils, so they will help support. And that's important because we didn't have to disturb the soil as much and then try to put in non-organic matter. So it's a good compromise for not disturbing more of the environment, but still making sure the structure has
Yeah.
integrity.
because see, in the old days, people had such different ideas. It's like all the mill waste went into Mascoma Lake.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that happening today?
Oh, a mess.
But that sludge will always be in the bottom too.
I love when Maggie gets
Can I give a
But
little?
it's a lot different color than it was when I grew up. When I grew up, that lake was a very different color.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Can I give a little update on the last time we met, we talked about, I'm obsessed with trying to get some dredging done by our place to get some of this crap out of the lake that has come down.
Mhm.
And you've sent me an email saying you'd be willing to work with me on that.
Yeah.
I've gotten the names of a couple of people that'll be good contacts
Mhm.
for us to deal with. And the way I got them was David Niels, who is the aquatic biologist who gave that cyanobacter discussion.
Yeah.
I watched
The
that.
one we
whole
watched
thing.
instead of our last meeting?
Yeah, I watched that. And
That
I
was
I
really
submitted a
informative.
question to him, but he never got to my question.
Mhm.
So I grabbed his email and I sent him the question. And my question had to do with the sediment that has come down. That's that big pile that I've shown everybody pictures of. I said, does this continually leach phosphorus?
Mhm.
And if so, does it need to be removed?
Mhm.
And he gave a very political, very safe answer. And he said, it's a very tricky question. But bottom line, he said, possibly. But he said, and then I asked him, who would be a good contact? So I got them, and then New Hampshire Lakes, I asked them similar questions, and so I got the names of a couple of people who I'm willing to follow through with. And if you would like to work with me on it, we could do something together.
Yeah.
I'm open to even going down to Concord and meeting these
Well,
people.
I am too,
Okay,
because I.
They should be able to do a core sample for you. You get a wetlands or a soil scientist to do a sample.
okay.
Like, so because on our George Hill property, we had an issue with a developer was like digging and undermining our wall. And so we went with the planning board, this is years ago, and he was just ripping right through. And so the guy brought this tool where, you jam it and turn it and it pulls a sample.
Oh.
And so you should, the engineer on the project was Dan Nash. But
Oh, I know, Dave.
yeah, and he's a great guy. So he might know who the soil scientist was.
Okay.
But you would have to have engineering done anyways.
Mhm.
Like in order to
Yeah.
do dredge, right? No one will do it for
Oh,
you.
yeah.
So, and the other
That's what
person
I've
who
been
might be a
working on,
good,
Trying to find engineering
Oh,
companies.
do you
that
want-
do it.
okay, so Dan, I don't know if he does, how much he does in your wetlands, but, Erin Darrow at Right Angle Engineering does a ton here. She's done a bunch on Crystal. She did AJ and Mice. Erin Darrow, she's at Right Angle Engineering in New London. She's Mascoma graduate, kids. And she's done a lot of the stuff for the town too. So I'd say I've seen her work in
Where is she?
New London. But she's frequently up here, so. And you can tell her I sent you.
So you got some names, Ed?
Yeah, I got the name.
Last name again?
DA.
From the Lakes
RR.
Association.
Yeah.
I got the name of NISA, NISA
Yeah.
Marks.
NISA.
That's her first name, and the last name is Marks, MARKS. And she's from New Hampshire DES. She's in Lake Management and Protection Program.
Mhm.
I think she might be someone who would be interested.
Mhm.
Somebody who would be sincerely open to discussing issues.
Yep.
And I think she'd be a good person for us to start with,
Okay,
to talk to.
yeah, I mean, I didn't realize until I did some investigative work that the stream that runs between my house and my neighbor's house was moved.
Could we be
So-
adjourning before we? 'Cause-
No, you have to do it in public, cause
Yeah.
if we're all gonna stay.
Yeah.
It used to go in a totally different direction.
Oh.
And then in the 1970s, some logger lived in the neighborhood and had a bulldozer and decided to change the direction of the stream.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
So back in those days, you just did it.
Yes.
And also has another stream from 2 roads over that feeds into this, and he took care of all that. So now I have a leg to stand on because it's not a natural stream. It's one that has been,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Diverted.
And if you see the water coming down there, because it comes from 4A and the other side of 4A,
Mhm.
which the town has nicely put in all kinds of drainage channels, and they put, what do they call those things under each driveway?
Culvert?
Culvert.
Culverts,
Under each driveway, so that it'll funnel very nicely down and into the stream.
Hmm.
So this stream is handling a half a mile square of area.
Jeremy, our head of our road crew, is really good at looking at, and he's talked a lot about, how the water flows downhill. And he put in some neat kind of rock so you can kind of put either in an uphill, it's weird, it's not a U, you go the other way, a V or straight across to catch some of
To
the silt
slow
and
it
to
down.
slow it down and make
Yeah.
the silt drop. So I always tell people when they have something like that, just check in with Jeremy and see what he can tell you to, if it's a town road, it's on us, and if not, we can get some help with the state.
Yeah.
Definitely worth asking,
Mhm.
and he's
If you
really,
don't ask, you won't ever get.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, that's the thing though, is who do you ask? I bumped into a.
Sometimes
whole
it takes a
bunch
while to find that out.
of- Yeah, it does.
highway@enfield.nh.us. Yeah.
He's the one that
Enfield
came too, wasn't
dot
he?
NH.
Yeah, he can.
Jeremy that
Yeah, he
came.
can.
Yep, he did, the one who told us about this out,
Mhm.
I talked to him at length today.
What's his name?
Jeremy Clay.
Oh, he's the
Did
guy. that came
anyone
and
have
talked-
Yeah, he can.
any other old business?
Nope.
Motion
Okay,
to
we'll
adjourn.
leave.
Time.
Motion to
do I hear a
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second it.
Yeah, seconded.
all right.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Good meeting,
Thank you for
guys.
joining us tonight, Jean and Lee.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, did Lee bounce? Lee bounced.
She got a tick bite on.
Yeah.
I'm so
She
glad
watched
they,
a lot.
I'm so glad they could, especially,
You
I
can
think
get
this
it.
was very important
The
conversation.
dogs this winter, and I was like,
Well, it's not more than one.